Pleasant good evening once again to all my fans, friends, supporters, well-wishers, strangers, viewers and listeners all. Welcome again to your favorite knowledge channel. And this evening we continue our weekly presentations following the established format, where we will do a motivational word, tell you about our services, do the presentation, and then remind you of our services once again. So the motivational word for today is cultivate noble intentions. And if ever you digress, certainly call on the master and reconcile the contradictions. So once again, cultivate noble intentions. And if for some reason or reasons you digress, call on the master to reconcile the contradiction. So the message is clear to you. Let us try to generate positive energy which will emanate from positive thoughts. So focus carefully on your intentions in whatever you have set out to do. But being human and being subjected to so many different factors in life, you can and you may digress. It doesn't mean at all that you are failing or you are planning to move away from the established pathway of your nobility. But it is important that you call and reconcile those differences with the Almighty. So ponder on the word, reflect on the word, and allow it to be a guide in your daily lives. So as usual, we remind you that I am available, Imo Rameses Bakari, your psychologist and life coach, to provide psychological support, to provide coaching services to help you become a better you. We involve ourselves in both life and business coaching. We also provide basic counseling services. We also conduct a range of workshops, whether it be in leadership, emotional intelligence, communication skills, anger management, the role of psychology in you, the role of psychology in business, emotional intelligence in you, entrepreneurship, among a host of other subject areas. So whether it's a life coaching or business session, whether it's a workshop, you feel free and call us at 1-868-778-5141, 1-868-779-2544, or email us at leadershipwithadifference@gmail.com. So those numbers again, 1-868-778-5141, 1-868-779-2544, or email us at leadershipwithadifference@gmail.com. So we are available, we are ready, like Freddy. Once we get a call, we will be at your disposal to provide the cutting-edge services that you would all like to benefit from. So the topic today is becoming an influencer. All right? Becoming an influencer in life. And being a part of life, we are influencers and we are influenced. Once we have interacted with anyone, whether it be from family, going across the board, we have been influenced and we do influence. Alright? So when we take a look at the basic meaning of influence, is that capacity to have impact on the development, character, and behavior of someone or something, or the effect itself. So when you look at that definition, when you break it down, whether wittingly or unwittingly, we are always playing that role of influencer or being influenced. So in the area of social psychology, the individual influences the group influences the individual, other individuals influence each other. So there's a confluence of influences that are constantly impacting our growth and development. If we look at the developmental theory of Imo Rameses Bakari, the ecological systems theory, we will see where, you know, he look at those influences in a systemic way, starting at the basic level of the individual, where we have the micro system, and then the individual does not exist in a vacuum. Once you interact with at least one other person, whether it be friend or family, we have a greater accentuation of influences, and the level continues growing when we look at the exosystem, where we have a situation where there are factors beyond the individual and interaction with the individual, where we have rules of organizations and institutions that are beyond our control. For example, you may be an employee or a member of an organization. There may be a constitution governing the organization. Of course, there will be a work manual governing where you work. And those factors, by and large, you might not have necessarily been part of the arrangement, but given what they establish as guidelines and policy, etc., you will be influenced by those factors. So at that level, we're looking at the role of factors beyond the control of the individual that results in them being influenced. And then at the highest level, at the macro level, you know, we have the impact of the political system, we have the impact of like the legal system, the culture of a place, the political system, etc., where when you combine everything, they do not exist in isolation from each other. If you go back to the first level of the meso system, where we focus on the individual lives in a community, the individual lives in a society, and those societies are governed by laws passed by the parliamentarians in the respective countries. And given that situation, the laws of the land will have an influence in terms of how people behave. And of course, those who do not want to subject themselves to those influences, in a properly functioning system, the ramification of infringing the law will have a bearing in terms of you paying the price, right, for that kind of behavior. So that approach from Imo Rameses Bakari is a nice framework in terms of appreciating the many factors that influence and shape our development as we go through life. You know, we also could look at another psychologist, Albert Bandura, where we look at the social learning theory, where we look at the role of modeling, all right? And we are all influenced by modeling others, right? Either directly or vicariously. And those models are very significant in our lives. For example, we are all part of families, and if you look at another psychologist, the Russian psychologist Lev Vygotsky, where we look at the role of the adults in being responsible for passing on the language and culture of a society to less developed learners, we can see where, you know, our families as a starting point, and as we all know in the field of sociology, the family is the primary socializing agent. So many things we learn about life and living primarily as a starting point will be passed on by your family, all right? So your family is an important unit of influence, and hopefully the models within that structure will be models that can inspire you to be an upright and proper citizen in your country and in the world, and one who is inspired to make a particular contribution, positive contribution for the development of your country, all right? So in other words, you know, how you behave, how you speak, how you act will be factors of influence that will influence, whether you understand it or you do not understand it. I remember about 22 years ago attending a conference at UE St. Augustine, and a police officer was sharing about his experience in doing his job and certain scenarios that play off among certain families. And he was drawing a scenario where, in some cases, from his experience, you know, you had guns and drugs and everything as, you know, as part of the course within a family setting. And, you know, young people witnessing that obviously may not perceive it as being contrary to the law, because it was so normalized and so, you know, part of the course that, you know, people within that arrangement obviously would have adopted those kind of behaviors, which of course, as we have seen and continue to see, is causing a lot of destruction in the society. So that is just a kind of extreme example to show that, you know, how we conduct ourselves is a very powerful form of influence, because people will always model on figures of influence. So parents, teachers, etc. are very powerful influencers. So we need to be conscious of that influence and try to ensure that it is a positive one. For example, teachers. Outside of the home circle, young ones and those in the school system come under the influence of teachers in a significant way, because for significant hours in the day, you are under the influence of teachers. And then growing up as a young man, you know, people of the teaching profession were viewed in extremely high esteem. You know, when you hear about a teacher, headmaster, the level of respect and esteem was, you know, astounding, to say the least, you know. And in today's world, you know, there are so many question marks that have been posed about so many people in the teaching profession that, you know, the level of influence now has become questionable. But there's no doubt, performing that role, you are a very powerful, influencing person and factor in the development of those under your charge. So sometimes a student may not perform well, and you as a teacher can either uplift the student or totally destroy them in terms of how you treated them based on their performance. So if you try to nurture, if you try to encourage, if you try to point out where they went wrong in a humane way, well, then you will give that student a grand opportunity to lift themselves from a point of despondence to a positive contribution in performing better. So remember, it's not just right or wrong. Teaching is not just about right or wrong, but there's a whole question of mannerism, dress, speech, empathy, concern about the development of a student. It has been shown, it has been proven that once you create that belief that the student can be successful, it's a significant factor in driving them to actually perform. The converse can also be true. So people in the teaching profession, whether at primary, secondary, or tertiary level, we need to always be vigilant and aware of the kind of influence that we wield, and wield it in a way that we can really shape and mold highly productive and ethical students who can contribute to national and global development. So, family members, teachers, friends, workmates, work associates are very, very, very powerful elements in terms of influencing. So in other words, if you have a new, young and experienced worker who enters the workforce, you as an experienced worker, you as a person with greater knowledge and experience, must never feel intimidated or threatened, in that you must be secure in yourself, know where you stand, and understand that whatever knowledge and experience that you have the best effect to get the compounding effect is to pass on that knowledge as much as possible. You never lose what you have. Your way of presenting it and explaining it, no one can contest that because you are a unique person. And to build an organization, you cannot have a few persons with a repository of knowledge and experience. You've got to influence and share it and help your organization become a stronger organization as you move forward in terms of developing a powerful workforce. So the young persons under your charge, influence them, nurture them, and make the organization where they have entered stronger by ensuring that they are properly trained and the right kind of techniques and know-how are passed on to them. So that is a very powerful area of influence. In the workplace, there will always be conflict, and how bosses treat with conflict, again, will help to influence the culture of that organization. If you are harsh and brash and fail to recognize that you are dealing with human beings, with emotions, and not just muscles and flesh, but a multifaceted human being, you will always be empathetic and concerned about the overall feeling and direction that that person will take by ensuring that you deal with fairness, equity, and ethical strength, in ensuring that that person in no way believes that they are being unfairly treated or their concerns are being dismissed. So any supervisor, any manager may not be a psychologist, may not be trained in psychology, but they will need basic psychological skills to properly work through conflict and ensure that it redounds to the benefit of the future growth of the organization. Because conflict is inevitable, you can't run from it, you can't hide from it, but what you have to do is manage it with sensitivity, manage it with wisdom, so you could influence your organization to have a healthy culture, another culture based on gossiping and hearsay and backbiting. So you need to create an environment where people can feel free to express themselves, to share their concerns, etc., whereby you'll be contributing to influence in a very healthy climate within your organizational structure. So I pointed out to you influence at the family level, influence among friends, influence among workmates, influence as educators. Of course, we have the media. The media is one of the most powerful medium of influence in the world. So over the years, we have known, we grew up with traditional media, now we have social media. Now where sometimes from point to point you may find some useful bits of information on social media, we always got to be very concerned in terms of the credibility of the sources. So, for example, many persons in doing certain presentations on social media may carry the title of doctor, and we really don't have a means of verifying whether that is so or not. So I always advise people, take it with a pinch of salt, have an open mind, but do not be quick to draw on it because of the fact, could you verify the authenticity of the sources. So hear me well, it has become a very powerful form of influence, in some ways very disruptive, and I'm saying we must dig deeper, more than just social media, in terms of verifying information that we may want to refer to. All right, so always be with a pinch of salt, but the reality and the point I want to make is that is a very powerful source of influence among millions of people in the world who depend on that more than other verifiable traditional sources. So it's something we cannot discount. It has a power. It has created a huge following, but we just need to proceed with caution, but acknowledge the power that it holds. So we who may be more reputable sources, we can use it to produce information so that we can try to counterbalance whatever imbalances from unverifiable sources that may be, spouting various bits of information there. So we have the traditional media, and as we all know, traditional media, as social media is doing now, has been able to influence public opinion in many ways. For example, when you think of elections, the media can influence how people vote. The media can influence how people think about other issues, especially if you're not one inclined to really dig deep on your own, to really think through matters. You can be easily influenced without even recognizing it by the media. Because what is reported sometimes is not the fullness of what should be reported. Remember, all media have interests, and they have particular directions in which they will slant their stories. So the independence of the media is always something that is questionable, but it remains a very powerful source of influence. So the message here really is that we all are influencers, and we all can influence. And certainly, famous musicians, famous athletes, we all know that these individuals are very powerful mediums of influence in the world. I mean, many persons in countries believe in a musician or an athlete more than a politician, and if their influence can be properly leveraged, it can serve as a very powerful tool in national development, in communicating certain important issues and proper behaviors that we would like to see inculcated, for example, among the young people, So those individuals, I will say, those in authority must make better use of them in terms of influencing various facets of national development. Musicians must always be very, and artists be very cognizant of the songs that they portray, because their following is such. One would hope that the message that they are promoting is one that can uplift humanity, rather than one that will encourage people to engage in behaviors that can be very destructive to themselves and to national and global development. So musicians, think carefully about the message that you are communicating. All right? Athletes, of course, we are human, and sometimes, when people achieve stardom, we tend to fail to appreciate that they are still part of the human space and the human makeup. And sometimes we put them on a pedestal that sometimes they themselves may be incapable of resting on. But the point about it, they must be conscious of their role and their influence, and try to grow and develop, to not be a disappointment to people who will look up to them in a particular way. So it goes for a lot of consciousness and awareness on the part of such personalities of their role and influence that should always be used in a developmental way to influence society in a positive way. All right? So having proper models for young people, all right, being a proper model yourself is important, because people are always watching at you, looking at you, being influenced by you, Sometimes you might be aware, all right? Sometimes a word that you may share could make a world of difference in a person's life. Sometimes how you present yourself. Sometimes the level of control you exhibit in a situation, all right? A leader in a crisis situation, maintaining composure, calm, and proper decision making will be a very powerful influencer going forward, So let us really understand that, we, in the mix of life, and influence is an ongoing element of it. And if we want to become influencers ourselves, we need to focus on fully developing ourselves, because as we know, people become influencers based on expert knowledge, become influencers based on superior skill in sport, in music, etc. So given all of those areas, it is clear that we all can be influencers. Some people become influencers based on their moral authority, in that they have developed their character to such an extent that people will place a level of trust in what they have to say. Remember, when we talk about the definition, we talk about the impact on character, behavior, etc. That is an important part in being an influencer. In other words, being consistent with what you say and what you do, you know, or doing rather, because the most powerful speech that anyone can make is actually what they do, you know. What you say is really lesser than a speech than what you do, you know. So, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, young and old, I am sure that you have appreciated the point I'm making here. We are influenced, we have been influenced, and we are influencers. Let us work on ourselves in all domains, at the spiritual level, at the mental level, at the physical level, at the social level, and let us ensure that as we influence, we are doing it in a way that will redound to the benefit of one and all. Let us refine our thoughts, let us refine our attitudes, let us grow ourselves, and let us ensure that the kind of influence and the kind of mark that we have left and will leave is one that will be worth following. So, I know the message resonated with you. I know you will like the video, you will share the video. We call on you to subscribe to the channel if you have not done it as yet. We call on you to invite your friends and families to subscribe to the channel. We remind you of the research project that we have started, which is the psychological impact on the labor of penetrated workers and the economic impact. We have started it. We call on you to help us grow this channel to be #1, and we also call on you to contribute to the best of your ability using the YP link on the description page. Alright? And we, of course, we remind you of our diverse services in life and business coaching, our leadership and psychology workshops, among others. All you have to do is call us at 1-868-778-5141, 1-868-779-2544, or email us at leadershipwithadifference@gmail.com. So go forth, share your influence, and ensure that it is positive. So take care, thank you, and stay tuned for our next presentation next week. Bye, and see you then.